Добрий день,
Good afternoon. I want to thank everybody for joining us. My name is Olga Atamanova, and Ukraine Media Center Ukrinform starts its operation today. It's year 9 of the war and day 285 of the full-scale invasion of the Russian aggressor in our land. And today we celebrate the International Day of the Volunteer, and on behalf of all of our team, we congratulate the army of our volunteers who work 24/7 for our victory. Thank you for your incessant work. And joining us online right now is Serhii Khlan, the deputy of Kherson Regional Council, and we will be talking about the situation in Kherson region. Good afternoon, Mr. Serhii. Good afternoon. Kherson region is Ukraine. Glory to Ukraine. Glory to the heroes. Mr. Serhii, what's the situation with bombardments in Kherson and Kherson region? Well, first of all, I want to congratulate all the volunteers of our country, because in the ranks of Ukrainian armed forces, I was feeling the support of our volunteers, and I want to express my sincere gratitude for the support of our army, of every single serviceman. So, happy volunteers. That the situation is still complicated in Kherson. Kherson remains under constant shellings by the enemy. The night was difficult. There were explosions heard everywhere, and the morning started with explosions too. There are casualties, there are injured. The occupiers bombard the residential areas, apartment blocks, private houses, and not only in Kherson but along the whole bank of the Dnipro River. The village Publikanets in the bank of Dnipro River was under artillery strike and shelling by tanks. It's a little bit above Berislav along the Dnipro River, and the shelling resulted in one casualty. In the same way, the occupiers continue shelling the city of Kherson with mortars, artillery fire, rocket artillery, and so on. There are explosions heard all over the city, and especially in the industrial areas of Kherson, as well as residential areas in Tavrisky district and Ostrev district of the city. Tavrisky is a northern district of the city with residential areas, but it's no exception because all the districts of the city suffer the shellings. The arrival time of the projectile is from 3 to 7 seconds because the distance from the other bank of the Dnieper is quite short, and the occupiers use mobile mortar teams which bombard the city from the left bank. One person died yesterday while crossing Dnipro River, and it was announced that everybody who was staying in their country houses and during liberation the movement across Dnipro River was restricted. People could only be coming from the river terminal from their country houses, and that was the family moving across Dnipro River coming to Riverport, and the occupiers started shooting civilians using the gunfire, the small arms, and one woman unfortunately perished. Mr. Serhii, do we understand the number of casualties in Kherson and Kherson region from the moment of the occupation? The casualties are being documented. I don't have the exact figure. There are official details about the casualties and injured from that moment of the occupation. I just don't remember that figure And about the operation of our power grid in Kherson and Kherson region, what's the situation of in that area? There were news that the the local government was able to resume the water supply to the city. Yes, now we reconnect certain number of consumers to the power grid, and it's the fifth day that it's happening. It was happening gradually. First of all, the critical infrastructure object, and then utility consumers like regular civilians. But the occupiers continue bombarding the power infrastructure to slow down the process of reconnection of the city of Kherson to the power grid. However, now the power supply is being resumed to over 80% of the consumers in the city. And now that the water supply is being reestablished, the water stream is still not quite intense, but people can cover their basic needs for the time being. There is water, there is light, and the situation is a little bit worse with heat supply, but the works are in progress to provide the water or the heat supply to the houses of the Kherson citizens. The cell network communication is being reestablished. It's good in the center of Kherson, in Chernobyevka and other districts of Kherson region. The situation is a little bit worse with mobile data. The internet access has been mostly provided through Starlink terminals. People can use internet in central railway station. The cell operators, the cell carriers started the resumption of operation of the SIM cards. People get in because they were blocked during occupation, a lot of numbers, and now people can procure new SIM cards for their phones. There are resilience stations deployed all over the city. People can get heated, can recharge their gadgets. But in view of incessant shellings of the power infrastructure objects, we have to understand that there may be breakdowns in power supply, including the supply of power to the resilience stations. So we have to understand that the situation is unstable. Mr. Serhii, there were news that in the end of the last week, the occupiers locked the city of Melitopol, blocked it completely, and restricted the exit for the civilians. So what's going on in the occupied area of Kherson region? Well, talking about Kakhovka, Nova Kakhovka, Oleshki, Gola Pristan, and the left bank, and all those towns which are located in the very bank close to the Dnipro River, the occupiers evacuated their occupant administrations to Henichesk and Skadovsk, and they enforce deportation of the civilians from there. The administration of Kakhovka and Nova Kakhovka are currently located in Skadovsk, and many collaborationists left to Henichesk and Skadovsk too. And in Arabazka Spit, those collaborationists who fled, they are moving to Arabazka Street in Golub, and they accommodate themselves in the sanatoriums of Skadovsk. They also pillage all the utility enterprises, private businesses. That's a total pillaging in a way that it was happening in Kherson. So they steal everything they can from Kakhovka and Nova Kakhovka, and civilians' movement is being restricted in those cities. They announced that people who will have to arrange the special permits to move around the city. We have questions in the studio. Irina Mamchur, Ukrinform. I would like to detailize about the collaborationists in Arabatska Speed. There were news on the internet that those collaborationists are being moved to Crimea. Is it true, and what can it mean? And another question about the traitors. Do you have any information about the traitors? I mean, those who were in the representatives of local governments, maybe deputy of regional councils. Are they now in the left bank, or they fled from there, or they just stay quiet, or maybe they take some active stance? Thank you for your question. The deputy of the regional council, Ropilevsky, was the representative of opposition bloc who called to join the agrarian industry to Russian laws, and he is now in Crimea, and his son is also regional council deputy. He's in Crimea too, so we have information that they left Kakhovka and are now staying in Crimea. As to the administration and collaborationists who are in Henishevsk, the administrations are in Henishevsk, and the representatives of those occupationist administration, those who cannot afford to move to Crimea, so they are currently accommodated in the sanatoriums of Arabatska Spit and Skadovsk. So that's I'm talking about the administrations of Oleshki and Hola Pristan, who can afford moving to Crimea. Yes, those do move to Crimea. As to the proxy chiefs, they stay with their local administrations, and those who can afford moving to Crimea fled to Crimea. And Mr. Serhii, about the water supply, can you give us at least percentage or absolute numbers, how many consumers are now reconnected to water supply? As to the power supply, the official details, official information is that 80% of the consumers are reconnected to the power supply. There is still no official details about the number of consumers who are connected to water supply. Is the evacuation still in progress? Was the percentage of people coming back to Kherson, if any? Yes, the evacuation is still in progress. I am back from Kherson. Recently, I was visiting the central railway station every single day. I've seen the trains going to Kyiv on a daily basis, and further on to Khmelnytsk. The organization is at very good level. The people come to the central railway station, get registered there. It's clean, warm. People can recharge their phones there. There is a Wi-Fi access. People register themselves in an organized manner. It all happens 4 hours before the departure of the train. People are being offered tea. They stay in warm premises. They get on the trains and leave. And additional carriages are being added to the train because there is a large number of people who desire to leave the city. There is also automobile transport with evacuation routes to Kropivnitsky and Kryvyi Rih. People also who can afford it, I mean those who can afford it, also leave to Mykolaiv or Odessa. For the time being, there are many internal refugees from Kherson to Mykolaiv. Mykolaiv became way more vivid as the city, many people, many vehicles of the citizens of Kherson who evacuated to Mykolaiv. It's dangerous to stay in Kherson because the explosions are being heard all the time. So when you stay in Kherson, you can hear it every single minute. And we called all the people who can afford it, wait for the better times in safer regions. Yes, there is certain number of people coming back to Kherson, but not on a permanent basis, but rather to check on their houses, their apartments, to see if Russians were accommodating themselves there, aren't they pillaged, just to make sure they're secure. But people don't stay for a long time in Kherson, and they usually come back to the places of their temporary residence. But there are those who refuse to evacuate, and that's why the main issue is to sort out the utility concerns, the water supply, power supply, heat supply, the humanitarian aid dissemination is being organized. It was previously in the central square of the city, and now it's addressed the individual help, the delivery of ratios is being organized directly to the people. There are stations of medicines dissemination. So the city becomes more vivid, but we still advise for the people to evacuate due to the constant bombardments by the Russians. Mr. Serhii, thank you very much for joining us. Dear colleagues, I will remind you we had Serhii Khlan joining us online, the Deputy of Kherson Regional Council, and just in 5 minutes we will have Alexander Staruk joining us, the military governor of Zaporizhia, and we will be talking about the situation in Zaporizhia, this morning's shellings. So bear with us, and glory to you.